Hi, my darlings. You are welcome to our channel. Today is a wonderful and a very special day, especially for a group or a set of people that the current series are dedicated to. I mean, they're part of a larger group. So, yeah, who can guess? I don't think it's news anymore that today is Mother's Day. And, to commemorate that on this channel, I want to sing for you. Are you ready? I'm singing alongside my son, who is also here. Happy Mother's Day to you. Happy Mother's Day to you. Happy Mother's Day, dear mommy. Happy Mother's Day to you. You are loved. You are precious. You are beautiful, you're wonderful, you're amazing, strong beyond words. I can go on and on and on about how amazing you are, but let me just, reserve the comments. So yesterday, yes, we're going right in, we're going right in, no too much formalities today. Yesterday, I had a poll on my Instagram page. You can follow me on there if you want to, Mariah Ahunaya, if you're not following already. Should I also use this time to welcome new subscribers? If I haven't met you before, if you haven't met me before, if this is your first time, I officially welcome you to our channel. Okay? Nice to have you here. And to my darling oldies, we understand that, we know how we do it. Okay, let's go right in again. Let's move on. So yeah, yesterday I had a poll on my Instagram page, and I asked which you would like to hear today. Is it inspiring mom stories about mommies who have done amazing things, or would you like to hear birth stories about how some of us became mommies? And the majority chose to hear birth stories, which was actually surprising to me. It was voted by a lot of moms anyways, but even non-moms and dads or guys, voted to hear birth stories as well. So I was a bit surprised because before I actually got pregnant, I was interested in an extent in things that had to do with birth, but it was very passive. I would not, quite actively want to hear about how your birth and your delivery went. But I'm surprised and I'm happy that, that was what the majority chose. And we're going to do that this afternoon. I'm going to be reading the birth stories from a book called The Day I Was Born, or The Day My Baby Was Born, actually. The Day a Baby Was Born, The Day My Baby Was Born, by Lanita McNicken Cates. It's one of those really inspiring books that I had, and just once in a while you just read through it. And it's about birth stories of different women from the abroad, yes, but birth stories of different women. And almost inside every story, as funny as it may seem, I could kind of see myself. So I hope that these stories are as interesting and as inspiring to you as they have been to me. And I'm just going to pick 3 random but also not so random stories that touch on different kinds of birth. Sit back, relax, and let us get into it. The first story I'll be reading from my, computer, my laptop, which is also a tab. I'll be reading the story of Meredith Davis, and it's called Birthing Iris, a slight deviation from the plan. Ready? Let us go. So it goes thus. I was certain we would have our baby well before the due date. But that date came and went. It was hard to be patient. I tried so many things to induce labor. I went on daily walks, took evening primrose oil capsules to soften my cervix, and drank copious amounts of raspberry leaf tea to stimulate uterine contractions. Late on a Saturday night, 6 days past my due date, contractions started. I thought I would be in labor by Sunday morning for sure. I went to bed so I would be well rested for active labor. But when I got up in the morning, the contractions had stopped. I was frustrated. On Sunday afternoon, the contractions resumed. I was able to function normally until well after I went to bed. That was at night. Around midnight, they became so severe that I had to breathe through them. While they had been consistently 8 to 12 minutes apart since the afternoon, they began to hurt a hell of a lot worse. I sat in bed with a little lamp on and documented the frequency and duration of each one. I was too excited to sleep. Besides, the contractions were coming too quickly for me to catch a wink between them. I had an office visit scheduled for 9:30 a.m. Monday, but thought maybe I should cancel and go in when the contractions got to 5 minutes apart. I called the clinic early Monday morning and was instructed to keep my appointment. My husband Lee stayed home from work to drive me. The midwife at the clinic finally told me that what I wanted to hear. I was 3.5 to 4 centimeters dilated, 80% effaced. Don't worry, we're going to talk about all these things a bit later on. Or I may to explain. When the cervix of a woman, when she's delivering, has to open up so that the baby can come through. It's not an automatic thing. And that is what these things mean in a very loose definition or meaning. And let me continue. Sorry, I cut short. The midwife at the clinic finally told me what I wanted to hear. I was 3.5 to 4 centimeters dilated, 80% effaced, and definitely in labor. Since we lived 40 minutes away, she instructed me to check into the hospital. But she said I would get a bite to eat and stroll around for a while if I wished. With all the reading I had done and the birth programs I had watched on Discovery Channel, I knew it would be beneficial to walk around and avoid the hospital environment. That got boring though, and we checked in around 11 a.m. After all, it was winter, and there was only so much to see in Kmart. So instead, we spent the afternoon roaming the corridor of the birthing unit. My mom and our douala, that is a birthing assistant, Cindy, arrived around 5 p.m. Labor progressed very slowly. By 6:30 p.m., contractions were 2 to 3 minutes apart, but I was still at 4 centimeters. Now she was going all the way to 10, and she was still at 4. And she had labored from midnight before till this time. In an attempt to speed up the process, I kept changing positions and stayed out of bed. I walked, squatted, rocked my hips from side to side while leaning on the bed, got on all fours. I sat on the birthing ball, reclined in the whirlpool, took a shower, and stimulated my nipple by dragging a rough washcloth back and forth over them. For a few hours, I was able to carry a normal conversation with my birth team between contractions. As labor progressed, I became more immersed in my own world and the sensations my body was experiencing. I gradually withdrew into a state of tunnel vision. The contraction pain I experienced started out as an uncomfortable pressure, and it had escalated to an unbelievable tightening in my abdomen, somewhat reminiscent of gas pains. She's helping us describe. I tried to keep my moaning at a low octave, as this seemed to provide more relief than high-pitched screams. Cindy provided much-needed counter pressure on my back and reminded me to breathe. As each contraction started to build, I had to freeze in place. Any attempt to change position or even take another stride forward made the pain much worse. If I was hunched over when one started, I had to remain in that position all the way through. The contractions became so intense that I experienced an endorphin rush after each one. Must have been serious. I remember resting my head on the side of the tub at one point while recovering from a contraction and wishing I could save a little of that rush for later. It was the best high ever and totally worth the pain I had endured to earn it. It was the ultimate kind of relaxation that makes your eyes roll back in your head and every muscle in your body to go limp. At 9:30 p.m., I was still at 4 centimeters. So I had my midwife break my water. The intensity of the contractions picked up, and I continued to change positions. Fewer and fewer positions worked to ease the pain. The contractions were becoming harder to manage and started to feel like they were overlapping. A new contraction would start before the previous one ended, and I wasn't feeling the endorphin rush anymore. I had even gotten to the point of being able to bring on a contraction merely by tilting my pelvis forward. As painful as it was, I intentionally tried to do this as often as I could, thinking these contractions felt particularly productive. I was feeling immense pressure on my bowels which led Cindy to believe I was getting close. But nope. The midwife offered me an enema. Enema is like an it's like an injection actually that is put in the bowel area to kind of help to release the pressure of the bowel, your poo-pooing area. You understand what I mean? And we have catheter, which is used for the urethra, the place where you pee from. So there are two types of catheter is a pipe. I had that when I was delivering, and they would put inside so that pee can easily pass. So this enema is so that whatever pressure the poo can easily come out as well. So moving on, the midwife offered me an enema, which I reluctantly accepted. Sitting on the toilet produced the most excruciating contractions of all, and I didn't want to have to sit there longer than absolutely necessary. After the insertion, they'll put it inside, I had to hold the suppository in for 5 minutes. Suppository are whatever is inserted into the anus. Sometimes they can even be drugs to soften that place, to moisten it, like to oil it, so that things can easily come through. After the insertion, I had to hold the suppository in for 5 minutes. I held it tight through those horrendous contractions before I was allowed to head for the toilet. I felt much better afterwards though. No regrets about that decision. When I checked at 1:30 a.m. Tuesday, that was midnight of the third day, I was 5 cm dilated. Hardly the progress I had expected. Hardly what I had expected either. Given what I had been through, despite my desire for a drug-free labor, I decided to accept Pitocin to help speed up things. I had the contractions artificially strengthening my Pitocin hurt worse. I was offered this as well. Although I didn't believe the pain could possibly get worse, I didn't think I could handle anything more severe. I was weak-minded by this point. You know when pain makes you weak, you can't think again. I had been laboring for more than 25 hours and I was exhausted. I wanted to rest. Lee and I agreed upon a code word so I could let him know that I was serious about an epidural block and that he should not try to talk me out of it. I looked him in the eyes and said, Fajita, Fajita, Fajita. I figured that if I was going to have an IV line for the Pitocin, I might as well have the epidural too. By 2:30 a.m., the epidural was working. I was able to rest comfortably. Internal monitors were inserted to better gauge the contractions. The nurses came every hour to check my blood pressure and monitor the contractions. Even though the epidural made me cold and itchy, I was able to get some sleep. At 7:30 a.m., thank you for reading with us. At 7:30 a.m., I was at 6 centimeters. The midwife explained to me that my contractions weren't effective at opening my cervix, and a cesarean delivery might be necessary. The staff played with the Pitocin's level, and I made it to 7 centimeters by 8 a.m. However, the baby had turned to a posterior position, making it even less likely that my cervix would behave as it should. With limp legs, I was helped into a kneeling position over a birth ball to try to get my baby to turn. By 11 a.m., this is well over 30 hours, the baby hadn't turned, and my cervix hadn't opened any further. A cesarean was imminent. To some extent, I was relieved that my baby would be out within the hour, but I was also very upset. I was so opposed to having a cesarean that I hadn't even considered the possibility. Even though I had had a few hours of advance warning to prepare myself mentally, I had focused my energy on trying to get my baby to turn and my cervix to open. I couldn't stop myself from crying. I was scared to undergo such an invasive surgery, and I felt I had failed. I couldn't help thinking that I had gotten myself into this position by having my water broken and accepting an epidural. I had both, and I still had vaginal delivery, so it's not by that. I tried in vain to convince myself that a cesarean was best for both the baby and me. The procedure itself went better than I had anticipated. My midwife assisted the surgeon, which made me feel more comfortable. I had not wanted to be handed off to a doctor I didn't trust or know. I was conscious for the surgery. I asked to have my arms and legs restrained, fearing I would freak out and cause the surgery to go terribly wrong. The staff assured me that I would be fine and didn't restrain me. Lee sat beside me, that's her husband, while they cut me open. That time in the operating room was the longest 30 minutes of my life. The anesthesia made me incredibly nauseous, and I could hardly breathe. I dry heaved while gasping for air and felt as if my lungs had collapsed. Aside from the physical effects, I worried that gauze or instruments might mistakenly be left behind. That's anatomy. I assumed that would not happen. The surgical staff counts everything that goes in and everything that comes out. But it was the most incredible feeling when they lifted my baby out of me. I felt as if someone had been standing on my abdomen without my knowledge and then suddenly had stepped off. It was so strange. It felt wonderful. I was surprised by how quickly they got her out. I swear, it was within 5 minutes of entering the operating room. The moment I saw her, I cried. I cried too. She was absolutely beautiful. Lee went with her as she was taken to the nursery to be cleaned up and weighed while I was being stitched up. After the surgery, I was transferred to a recovery room to be monitored for an hour. My baby girl was brought to me for her first feeding. While nursing didn't particularly go well, it was still a wonderful introduction. 9 days overdue, and after 35.5 hours of labor, baby Iris Amelia was finally here. I never felt so much in love in my heart. I didn't know I could love something so much. I still cry when I think about how much I love her. The whole experience was so intense and surreal. I can't imagine anything in my life that will be as memorable. Even though my labor and delivery were different, much different than I had hoped, I still cherish the experience and love reliving it in my mind. Wasn't that a beautiful story? Though long, it was very beautiful. Once again, happy Mother's Day as we move to the second birth story. This one is much shorter. So, this is by Mizzy Bowen. Easy pregnancy and easy labor. My entire pregnancy was perfect with no morning sickness or anything. Except for the round tummy and the 20 trips to the bathroom every hour, nobody would have known I was pregnant unless they noticed all the Mexican food I ate every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Wow. At my 38th week checkup, my doctor told me I was a little more than 4 centimeters dilated. Wow. And could have the baby any day. I was surprised because I wasn't having any contractions. On my due date, December 2nd, I started having contractions while Christmas shopping with my sister-in-law Amber. I also delivered on my due date. At first, I thought the baby was just moving. But every 10 minutes, I felt like someone was blowing up a balloon in my stomach, letting it get bigger, and then allowing it to deflate. What an interesting way to describe contractions. We went home and I started pacing. I knew it was too soon to call the doctor, and I didn't want to call my husband Nathan yet either. Amber kept timing me and walking me every time I went into a different room. She was like a little puppy, timing me with her watch. She was so excited that she was with me. She and her husband were trying to start a family, and I think she was taking notes, like I did with my friend Adele. My contractions were getting fairly strong, and around 3 p.m., my water broke. I knew then that I should go to the hospital. Amber drove me while I called Nathan from the car. I was having really bad contractions by then, so Amber had to talk to him. She then called my mom, her mom, and her husband. Amber was driving like a total nut. She was driving way too crazily while using the cell phone. I didn't say anything though because the pain was so bad. I wanted to get to the hospital quickly. When we got there, I was in so much pain that I couldn't even walk. Amber dropped me off inside the emergency room door and went to park the car. A nurse came over with a wheelchair and helped me sit down. On our way to the elevator, Nathan and Amber both came running in. Nathan had seen Amber parking the car and ran over thinking I was still in it. I thought for sure I was going to have the baby while sitting in the wheelchair in the elevator. But thank God, we made it to a room. When the doctor on call checked me, I was already at 10 centimeters. What a miracle. After just 10 minutes of pushing, our perfect baby boy was born at 3:32 p.m. He weighed 6 pounds, 1 ounce, and was 19 inches long. Nathan was so proud. We had decided to name the baby after him, if it was a boy. My husband was the first to hold our baby Nathan after they cleaned him up and all the stuff they do. My husband told me how proud he was of me. I couldn't believe that labor and delivery had happened so fast and with no pain medication. I hope that when I am pregnant again, it happens exactly the same way. Oh, did you like that one? I like that one as well. I like both anyways. Both were interesting. We're moving to our final story. So I think for these first 2 stories I read, this was probably their first, first children. Although it didn't state it, but from the tone of things, I think it was. This next story is going to talk about someone who was having to deliver, the second child, to go through the experience of pregnancy and delivery the second time. So, and this will be our final story. So, pay attention and see you shortly. This story is by Alison McG, and it says, my second baby was more difficult than my first. As soon as I found out I was pregnant with my second baby, I knew it was a little boy. My due date fell during my first semester of nursing school, but a month before that, I went into labor and dilated to 3 centimeters. So, I think I should say something at this point. Usually for first time deliveries, you may go a bit past your due date. You will most likely go past your due date for most women. But for second time deliveries, you may most likely go, have the child before your due date. So it's a give or take. Let me go back. My due date fell during my first semester of nursing school, but a month before that, I went into labor and dilated to 3 centimeters. I was scared of having my baby early, but thankfully I didn't. During the remaining 4 weeks of my pregnancy, I was totally miserable. I was having contractions constantly, maybe Braxton Hicks, who knows. But since I was under so much stress, my body wouldn't regulate them. 1 week before I was due, my doctor asked if I wanted to be induced the day before my due date of November 16. I quickly agreed. The night before being induced, I took something to help me sleep. Although I knew what to expect, the worst thought was having the contractions, but I knew that after tomorrow, I would have a beautiful baby boy. I was also scared that I might have to have a C-section. I thought I would be okay with it, but I felt that major abdominal surgery like that should be avoided at all costs unless it was medically necessary. I had the same thoughts as well, but some people opted for it from the get-go. When I arrived at the hospital the next day, the technicians needed 2 hours to get the Pitocin drip going. Again, they had to stick me 5 times to get the IV line started. I finally told the last technician that if he couldn't get it going, I was heading home. Needless to say, they finally got me started on the Pitocin. Then around 9 a.m., the doctor came and broke my water. The next day, 9 a.m. This is the strangest feeling because you want to stop all the gushing water that came in out of you, but you can't. I don't like it to be wet, so I had my mother change my pads constantly. But the more I moved, the more I became soaking wet. After that, I started cramping a little and had the nurse check me. I wanted to make sure I got my epidural block early because I didn't want to suffer like I did with my first baby. When I had made it to 4 centimeters dilated, I told the nurse I wanted the epidural, but after receiving it, I got sick. This was because my blood pressure bottomed out and I got very nauseous. That only lasted for a little while and then I didn't feel anything. Thank you for talking. I knew my legs were there, but I couldn't feel them. For 5 hours after they started the Pitocin drip, I watched the Golden Girls on TV. My mother thought they weren't giving me enough Pitocin because my monitor wasn't picking up any contractions. She called the nurse, but by the time the nurse arrived, I had started cramping. When the nurse checked me, I was 9.5 centimeters dilated. So they started to put my legs in the stirrups. That is a really awkward position because your bottom is in mid-air and everyone in the room can see it. Some people do incline. I did incline, my legs were down, but some people's legs are raised up and they are lying on their back. I think that's what happened here. I don't like that position. It's against gravity. I don't think it makes sense, but anyways. I only pushed for 15 minutes, but the last 8 minutes were simply horrible. The baby got his shoulders stuck between my pelvic bone, and his head was out before the doctor realized it. When the head is out, there is only so long before the shoulders should have to be delivered, because the baby's oxygen supply is being cut off. So the doctor called for 3 nurses to help push him out. Let's see what happens here. 2 nurses held my legs to my chest, while a 3rd nurse got on the bed on top of my stomach and pushed on it. They had to do what they had to do. In the background, my mother was cheering me on. She said, just think about all those cute little clothes you're going to be able to get back into. I had to give her some credit. She tried. My son was delivered with a big bruise on his head, on his face, because his shoulders were delivered much later than his head. He was 8 pounds, 4 ounces, and healthy. I think that was a good story, wasn't it? It was different, but it was good. And that brings us to the end of our unusual episode, our Mother's Day episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys learned from it. My baby needs my attention, so I'm slightly tilting towards ending this quickly. But before I end, I want to say a prayer for all mothers. As I said, mothers who deliver their children come from a much larger group of mothers, and all of them are amazing, all of them beautiful, all of them unique. This much larger group of mothers range from mothers who care, nurture, love children who are theirs and not theirs, adoptive mothers, mothers who have lost their children. Heart goes out to you, but that doesn't make you any less of a mom. You're an amazing warrior, and we're here with you, community of moms. Mothers who are aspiring to be mothers, mothers to be, young moms, pregnant moms, and all the different kinds of moms. Joshua, I'm coming. And all the different kinds of moms that we have. I pray that God will continue to strengthen you. You are amazing. That just like the Bible talks about the Proverbs 31 woman, your praise will be sung continually. That you will know your value, you will know your worth. You will walk in the light of the woman that you are, of the queen and the mother that you are. That God will cause your children to be blessed beyond your imagination. That your labor over them will not be in vain. 1 second. That the state of the country will be conducive for your children. And that is my prayer for you this day. I would have prayed so much more, but I had to run to my little one. I love you guys, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Happy Mother's Day.